had a couple of, okay, yes, seems that everything is working okay. We have over 500 of you so far, which is excellent, from lots of different places as well. So good to see so many of you here. Thank you very much for confirming that you can see and hear. Obviously, we're just about to start, and I just wanted to give a few housekeeping notes before we do start, just so you've got some information. So thank you very much for joining today's online conference with National Geographic Learning and with Linguist in Ukraine. My name's Lucy. I work at NGL and I'm based in the UK. I'm shortly going to hand over to our presenters, but I just wanted to give you some notes. I hope you're all getting on okay at home in these slightly difficult times, and I hope you're all staying safe and well. It's nice to see that lots of you seem to have sun where you're based. So we're going to have a few speakers today. We're going to have two short introductions from some guys at Linguist, and then we have our two speakers, Hugh Dellar and Alex Uorren. But I will give you a few notes beforehand. If for any reason you are disconnected, don't worry, we are recording today's session, and we will send this round to you in a couple of days or as soon as possible. And those of you who have attended more than 60% of today's sessions will also receive a certificate as well. If you lose sound or if you can't see the PowerPoint at any point, just close your window down and join through the link in the email that you will have got, as it's better just to reboot. You can see, obviously, lots of you, that there's the chat box there at the moment. Please do interact with our speakers. There will be some time allocated for questions at the end, but do feel free to post relevant things in during the sessions as well, and our speakers will do their best to answer your queries. But sometimes I think we might be okay today, but we have had to remove the chat box sometimes if the volume of questions is too high. But do note that we will try and get round to them all and make a note of them all and get back to you. Just one final note as well, above the chat box you will see there is a handout which Hugh has provided for his session. This was sent round to you when you, thank you Alex for pointing where it is. If you just click on that and then click download file, you'll be able to download that. I know this was sent out with the invitations as well, but if any of you haven't received that, please do download it now. So I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction, although I know many of you know him already. Hugh Dellar is an author, teacher and teacher trainer. He has over 20 years experience in the field. He is the co-founder of Lexical Lab, and he has co-written the methodology book Teaching Lexically as well. Hugh has given teacher training and development sessions in over 20 countries, although I feel like that might be more now. And he's also co-author of the Outcome series and the Perspective series, both published by National Geographic Learning. So I think that's all my notes. So I'm going to welcome Hugh and see if he can switch on his camera and his mic and hand over to him. Oh, sorry. We do have a short introduction from Diana first. So Diana, if you'd like to go first, your presentation is ready.
I'm not Diana, by the way, in case you were wondering.
Okay, I can hear someone. Hello? My name is Diana Galavany. I'm an ELT consultant for Linguist in Ukraine. And first, I'd like to say that the official representative of National Geographic Learning here in Ukraine is Linguist company. You can contact us if you want to buy books, to find out what materials we have and what's new for teachers and for students. I'm very happy to share the news with you, with all of you. We have launched our National Geographic Learning site for Ukrainian teachers. Here you can look for different courses for different levels, different ages. And also you can read about each course, download sample pages, try them with your students. And that is not all. We also have blogs with useful resources, articles, lesson plans, and many other things. So just visit our site, check it after the session, and enjoy it. Let me get you acquainted with our textbooks. You can see different series, different ages, and for different needs. Can you see this yellow grief word next to some books? It means that book has permission for use in state schools. The unique feature for National Geographic Learning textbooks is those high-quality, stunning videos and photos that tell stories from all over the world. They tell about different people, different cultures. You can discuss them with your students for hours, and they will feel that English, not just the subject, English is something they need in order to find out new things, learn something new. The material is up to date. It grabs your attention with the unique facts from all over the world, and you will see the teaching grammar, vocabulary, speaking could be really motivating. Each textbook is accompanied with a platform. It's very easy to use. Students will find their audios and videos. Teachers will find real treasure, different texts, tests, additional resources, and teaching tips. You don't need one registration. It's very important. You just go there, use the material. If you teach children and teens, we suggest you the following series. For those who need good grammar, lots of vocabulary, but still want to motivate students, we suggest the following books. They cover the school program and help you to bring the world into your classroom. If you need some more communicative approach, and if you want your students to be able to discuss different topics, plus to talk about different subjects in English, pay attention to this series. For all the teens, we have a unique course that is based on TED Talks. It teaches students to be great presenters, develops critical thinking and collaboration skills, plus prepares for different exams. Again, you can see this grief sign. It means that the books can be used in state schools. Wonderful World is a great series for the students from the 1st to the 6th grade. It tells about the world with these stunning photos, with interesting topics. All texts have real-life connection, and pupils will study how to read with the stories of different children from all over the world. Grammar is presented clearly. The pupils get structured and practice it with meaningful tasks. The textbooks help to develop skills in a clear system, and also each level has workbook, student book, grammar book, that is important, additional flashcards, posters, alphabet book for the first level, and all the audio is online. Resources for the teachers are online, so it's very easy to use. Also, we try to support teachers with different useful material. We have some lesson plans for this book, additional cards, and also the latest is this collection of teachers' ideas. What interesting communicative games can be played with different tasks. So if you join the Linguist site, you can download them for free and use them as you wish. Secondary school. Now I have a question. Do you have a group of teens who are very difficult to get interested? We suggest this great, our best-selling series, Close Up, 2nd edition. It suggests interesting topics, great texts that inspire curiosity. It helps to develop all skills that are required through carefully graded material, questions that develop critical thinking, and help start discussions. we have special offer for teachers from Ukraine. If you buy student book and workbook, you get the third component for free. This is Close Up for Ukraine. That is also created in the form of the textbook, but it helps you cover all state program using facts about Ukraine. If you work with adults, you may know that there are like 3 main inquiries. These are passing the exam, English for traveling, for everyday use, and business English. We have great solutions for each of these inquiry. So check out the book for adult learners and help them become confident in their knowledge. You can see my contact details, so if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, to write me, to visit our site or Facebook page, and ask any question you have. National Geographic Learning in Ukraine, not just the books, it's actually support for the teachers. 1 or 2 times each month we deliver webinars for the teachers. The next one is very, very soon, after this conference, I mean. It's on the 8th of April, and we are going to announce it actually tomorrow. So follow us and find out what the speaker is, what the topic is, and what interesting things you can get. Also, competitions. Last Christmas we had that great competition for students. We collected videos with recipes on New Year cards from pupils from all over the Ukraine. And now we announced competition for university students. It's very interesting and creative. They had to make a video and send them to us. All the information is here. You can scan this QR code to find out more, or again visit our site where you can find all the information, or just contact me if you need to find out some more details. Actually, these are my contacts, so feel free to remember them, to visit our sites. And again, if you have any questions, I'm really happy to meet you. And I see here teachers from all over Ukraine. That's really great. Like all the regions are here, so I'm very glad so many people today are with us. I wish you to have really productive, inspiring time. And so I won't take your time anymore. I would like finally to say thank you for your attention. And I think that we can start with one of the best speakers I know, the person who creates so much. And so meet Hugh Dellar.
So I am not Hugh, obviously. We have lost him and we're just trying to find out sorry, we're having a few technical problems. We're just trying to get Hugh back on screen for you. Oh, this looks promising. We have his presentation ready. We've just lost him on sound and video. Oh, here we go.
Can you hear me, everyone? One minute.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh yeah, can you hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Oh, finally. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I've had to turn off my desktop and switch to my laptop. So, hello. I'm now kind of staring into the corner of my little man cave here. Apologies for the technical problems. And thank you so much to such an amazing number of you for turning up from all over Ukraine. Greetings from lockdown London, where we're halfway through the second week of lockdown. It's quite a strange feeling. I'm guessing it's something that many of you are also dealing with. So, you know, we're all in the same boat, I guess. So, what I'm going to be talking about today is really what we do when we try to help students get better at teaching, at learning to speak better in English, and what the implications might be for the way that we think about the teaching of grammar and the teaching of language more generally. Okay? In the old days, in the UK at least, and maybe also where you're from, in Ukraine, in the old days, when a king or a queen died, there was a shout that would go round in the palace. People would shout, "The king is dead! Long live the king!" Or, in this day and age, "The queen is dead! Long live the king!" And when this happens, the new king can, of course, be more or less benign, nicer or less nice than the previous monarch. Some kings and queens are obviously slightly more strange and slightly more disturbed than other kings or queens. If you Google mad monarchs, which is always a fun thing to do if you find yourself with some time on your hands, you might learn, for example, about Charles VI of France. Charles VI of France believed that he was so precious that he must be made of glass, and he hired the best tailors from all over Europe to try to make him special clothing which contained metal rods inside. So in case anyone touched him like that, the metal rods would absorb the shock and he wouldn't break, being made of precious glass. Peter the Great in Russia decided to tax beards. On reflection, of course, not quite as mad as taxing teachers, but still a rather strange thing to decide to do. And here in the UK, Henry VIII listed on social media as his hobbies burning monasteries and beheading wives. It's quite a strange man. However, whatever the nature of the regime, one thing that was certain was king or queen would always follow king or queen. Essentially, the system would always remain the same. As you can see at the moment with the kind of, you know, the possible news of Prince Charles becoming king if and when the Queen ever dies. And I would like to suggest, in case you're wondering why I've begun by talking about mad monarchs through the ages, I'd like to suggest that actually English language teaching isn't that dissimilar from the royal family, because methodologies come and go. We get direct method, but then Direct method is dead. Long live something else. Grammar translation is dead. Long live direct method. Direct method is dead. Long live audiolingualism. Audiolingualism is dead. Long live communicative language teaching. And obviously, some of these methodologies are slightly stranger or more unusual than others. If any of you have ever seen videos of silent way lessons. Yeah, those kinds of classes where the teacher doesn't talk for an hour and pulls the English from the student's brain. Rather peculiar. Maybe you've seen lessons of Suggestopedia, where you lie down on a beanbag whilst listening to relaxing music, and a Bulgarian professor tries to implant hundreds of words into your mind through relaxing, melodious stories. Some of the methodologies, I think, were rather more sensible. I'm guessing most of us don't have that many problems with the idea of communicative language teaching. I guess many of us would see ourselves as communicative language teachers. So, methodologies come and methodologies go. You could say that now we're in a kind of post-communicative language teaching age of principled eclecticism, if you wanted to sound very impressive at a dinner party. But what remains remarkably resilient beneath these changes in methodology is the system itself. And I think in language teaching terms, what that means is what we actually teach. Excuse me, that's not a silent way part of the presentation. That's just me drinking some English medicine, which is a strong builder's tea. Yeah, so what remains remarkably resilient across all these different methodologies is what we find ourselves teaching. And I think still, far too often, what many teachers find themselves teaching is grammar plus single words. If you look in most dominant course books around the world, not including outcomes, I should add, but if you look in many big selling course books around the world, what still drives the language content is grammar. And when I say grammar, it's often a very limited view of grammar, okay? It's a particular kind of closed view of grammar, if you like. Because, basically, from elementary up to advanced, the verb phrase remains king. King grammar, tends to mean grammar that we can put a name on. So it means things like the present simple, the future perfect continuous, the third conditional, the passive, the past perfect, modal verbs, those kinds of things. It's mainly the English verb in all its glory that remains the obsession within English language teaching. And I sometimes feel, when I'm in a kind of depressed mood, I guess, that even though we live in a time of communicative language teaching or post-communicative language teaching, the target structures and the examples that we still see in too many, I think, course books aren't actually that much different to grammar translation. A cynic might argue that all we've really managed to change in 150 years of language teaching is we've swapped grammar translation for a few more information gaps. Of course, where you have a monarchical system, like a royal family in place, you don't just have royalty. You also have a whole extra hierarchy of status and snobbery. So usually you get an aristocracy, you get barons and baronesses and dukes and duchesses and counts and countesses. And there's a lot of snobbery that goes with this. You know, the dukes look down on the barons, or the duchesses look down on the countesses, or however it works. And of course, most English language courses, most English language course books don't just give us grammar. You get vocabulary, and you get skills work too. But I feel still that of this kind of holy trinity, if you like, grammar is always the most privileged, And the other two areas are often looked down on in some kind of way. And you see this kind of status and snobbery reflected in lots of different ways, okay? I used to run CELTA courses at University of Westminster here in London. And I remember one year we had two candidates who we felt were both A-grade candidates. And we had the Cambridge assessor come in on the final day of the course to basically check that our course was up to scratch and to see what they made of our grades. And one of the trainees did a grammar-based lesson, one did a vocabulary-based lesson. Both of them were really, really solid lessons, and we felt as trainers they were both kind of grade A level lessons. We went out for a coffee after the lesson to discuss things with the Cambridge assessor, and the assessor basically said, yes, the teacher that did the grammar lesson, splendid, you know, textbook definition of an A-grade lesson. The vocabulary lesson, yes, it was very good, but has she done a grammar lesson yet? Because that's really the proof of the pudding. And I obviously disagreed quite vocally with this interpretation of what makes a good lesson. But if teacher trainers and the assessors of teacher trainers are engaged in this kind of snobbery, it shouldn't surprise us that teachers themselves often become a bit snobbish about language. When I wrote my very first book called Innovations back in the early 2000s, for me it was a book trying to look at everyday spoken language. And I was sent to Cambridge to go and do a talk about it. And I was talking about how if we're serious about teaching spoken English, we need to be looking at more collocations and fixed expressions and examples of how grammar works in speech, etc. And at the end, I said, are there any questions? And somebody stood up and said, so your book is basically just language for Swedish au pair girls, as though teaching spoken English only applied for students of a particular nationality with a particular job. And I've seen this also from teachers. Teachers will talk about classes that they're working with and say, oh, they're a good class. They're very fluent, but they don't even know what the present continuous is. They couldn't tell you what an adverbial clause was, etc. And of course, this kind of anxiety about grammar trickles down to our students. You ask students, even really, really good students, how they feel about their English. And almost always the most common answer that you'll get is, my grammar's terrible. Sometimes when students say this to me, I think, well, your vocabulary is very limited as well. And to be honest, your pronunciation could do with a bit of work. And I'm guessing your listening and your reading aren't that hot either. But, you know, if you choose to interpret it that way, so be it. Sometimes students, even students at proficiency level, you know, the super fluent Swedish au pairs, sometimes say, I know words, but I need to study more grammar. And I have to break the bad news that we don't have any more grammar in English because they've done it all already. Now, you may note in these kinds of comments a kind of air of anxiety that trickles down from assessors to trainers to teachers to students. And I'm going to return to this idea of grammar anxiety in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the weirdness that's caused by looking at grammar in isolation, and to question really whether looking at grammar in isolation for the majority of our classroom time is actually what will lead to proficiency. I think part of the problem is that separation of language and snobbery regarding the relative status of grammar and vocabulary frequently leads to a rather atypical, unusual view of the world. And this connects back to the idea of the royal family. Excuse me. It is a mug as big as my head. Many years ago, when I used to work at University of Westminster, the Queen Elizabeth II, graced us one day with her presence. Okay? We were told that the Queen was going to be visiting the university for some reason I've forgotten. And I'm not a huge monarchist, but it was an interesting experience. What happened was a few select students were chosen. They chose one teacher from my department who was an ardent royalist to meet the Queen. They were all trained up. They were taught how to bow and curtsy and how to leave the room without turning their back on the Queen. And they were told what they could and couldn't say to the Queen. They spent about £5,000 cleaning the pavement outside the university. If you've ever been to London, what you see on the pavements is these little black circles, which are actually chewing gum that's been trodden into the pavement over the years. And there was this little 400-metre stretch of pavement on Regent Street that suddenly didn't have any black spots on it. It had been kind of cleaned incredibly, so that when the Queen arrived and was ushered into the university, she wouldn't see any disgusting blackened marks of chewing gum on the beautiful pavements of the capital city. In the same way, they cleaned all the toilets, they cleaned all the graffiti and the, you know, students' pictures of genitalia and things off the desks. And then the Queen met these students who knew how to talk to her and bow and scrape, while the rest of us were locked in the upstairs staff room. We were told that for one day only we could all smoke in there if we wanted to. And that, you know, we could all basically kind of do what we wanted so long as we didn't come down and disturb the Queen. Afterwards, we all went to the pub, as you do. And we were talking about what a weird day it had been and what a kind of weird view of of life that, you know, we'd had of the Queen visiting. But we then started thinking how weird the Queen's view of the world must be, because the Queen must live in a world where she thinks pavements are always clean. She thinks everybody loves her. She thinks everybody knows how to walk in and out of the room in the way that they've always done it. And that basically she sees a very, very peculiar view of the world. I then thought, well, actually, that's basically the way in which most course books present grammar. That's the way that I was trained to think about grammar. Most course books, and I think most training courses still, clean grammar up in such a way that it distorts the reality of language use. Okay, so they see language in a way that isn't actually reflective of what we do with language in the real world. And when you look at, for example, the Cambridge Advanced or the Cambridge Proficiency exams, I think they're good exams, by the way. I'm a big fan of FCE, CAE, CPE. If you look at those exams, you have to ask yourself, is it really grammar? Is it structural, present perfect, continuous, future perfect, simple, mixed conditional, passives, etc., that makes the difference between, say, an intermediate and a proficient speaker? Well, let's have a look at some questions from a recent Cambridge Proficiency paper. Okay, is this grammar? This is from the multi-choice section where students have to decide. Taken up residence, put up residence, made up or built up residence. Okay, well, you have to know that you take up residence. To relax, students stroll rather than prowl, stumble or trudge down the streets. New buildings have sprung up everywhere. There's a flourishing tourism industry, and you can fall out of favour, but not support or opinion. Basically, none of this is grammar. I mean, you could argue that much as some may grumble, blah, 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 there's no doubt that blah, 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 blah. But even that, it's not grammar in the way we traditionally think about grammar. It's not grammar in the way that English File or Murphy's Grammar in Use treats grammar. At the same time, is it just words? Obviously not. Basically, what they're testing, and as I said, I think it's a good test, okay? What they're testing is the interaction of words with other words and of words with grammar. And a lot of the time, it's basically inexplicable. It's very difficult to explain why we say fall out of favour but not fall out of approval. It's just because that's what we say. That's the collocation. And it's also kind of inexplicable other than through examples. Understanding this kind of interaction, understanding the way in which words interact with each other and the way in which words interact with grammar takes a long time, okay? I think we all need to accept it's a long journey to get to this stage of being able to pass Cambridge proficiency. And it basically must mean, I think, earlier exposure to more of this kind of thing and repeated exposure to more of this kind of thing over time. In other words, this isn't something that can just be learned at proficiency level once you've spent 400 hours mastering the important grammar. Students need to start noticing and start learning all of this kind of stuff from a much earlier level. So, I would argue that grammar as it's often presented doesn't lead our students to this kind of level of proficiency. But actually, it's worse than this, because in many ways, I think, it can make the process much harder. It can make the process much more troubling. Which brings us to Luciano. Luciano was one of my students, an Italian student, who I'm still in touch with, actually, and who knows he features in this particular talk. Excuse me. Yeah, so Luciano suffered terribly from a crippling disease that maybe many of your students over the years have suffered from. A disease known as grammar anxiety. It's an even more common disease than coronavirus, but maybe we take it less seriously. Luciano was an Italian lad who always used to panic about things in the classroom. One of the first times I remember teaching him was we had this question, what was it like? And we were talking about holidays. Where did you go for your holiday? What was the food like? What was the weather like? What were the people like? What was the hotel like? And some answers. And Luciano kept looking at this sentence and repeating it. What was it like? No, Hugh, it's not grammatical. And I said, Luciano, listen to me. Trust me. I'm an English teacher. Okay. It's grammatical. Okay. I know these things. No, like. I said, maybe in your language, Luciano, you say, how was it? Or how was it like? He said, no, I understand the meaning. But here, like, it's a verb. Now, you might want to stop and think about how you would answer that question. There's two answers, okay? The first answer is, no, it's not a verb. The second answer is, listen, it's a what was it like, okay? You just have to learn this as a whole phrase. He didn't like this answer, and I went home and decided to look this up and do some research, okay? So the first dictionary I looked in, the Macmillan Dictionary, said like in this context is a function word. Cunning. What this means is they don't know what it is either, so they're just going to call it a function word. But what was good about this dictionary was they had a separate entry for what was it like, and they had the questions what was the weather like and what was the food like, which was what I'd been trying to teach. I looked in the Oxford Dictionary and it said it's a preposition. Okay, and I thought about it and I thought, well, that can't be right, can it? Because we're not asking if something is like something else in the same way as we ask if something is next to or opposite something else. When you say, what's her mum like? You don't say, like an elephant. What's her boyfriend like? Like my uncle. We don't do it like that. It's not how the word works. The third dictionary I looked in said preposition / function word, which basically means they don't know either. So if dictionaries can't agree, if lexicographers can't agree, what chance have we got as humble everyday classroom practitioners of explaining these things away? You know, it's not a verb, it's a what was it like? The next moment where Luciano's grammar anxiety manifested itself was we were doing a revision activity. It was a pre-intermediate group, and it was just a simple multi-choice thing. And one of the questions was, have you been to Mexico before, or have you gone to Mexico before? Okay? And I had a Mexican girl in the class called Clarissa, and I was going through the answers and saying, right, number 3, have you, anyone? At exactly the same time, Luciano shouted out gone and Clarissa shouted out been. And I said, yeah, that's right. And the correct answer is, well done, Clarissa. Have you been to Mexico before? Luciano got very upset by this and said, Clarissa, how do you know? What's the rule? And Clarissa just basically laughed and said, the rule is, I've never heard I've gone there before. I've heard lots of people say, oh, you're from Mexico. I've been there. I've been to Cancun. Have you been to England before? Okay? And in non-native speaking contexts like Ukraine, I think it's even more important to make sure that students just get this kind of exposure so that they don't necessarily always process things by rules. They process things by, this is what I've heard before. I've heard people say this and I've seen this written down tens of times, hundreds of times. So, as I said, Luciano is suffering from grammar anxiety. I first started thinking about this kind of idea of grammar anxiety when I read a book by a kind of popular philosopher in the UK called Alain de Botton, who wrote a lovely book about status anxiety. And in this book, it's basically about the way we worry about where we are in society and if we're higher or lower than other people. And he quotes Thackeray, who was a great Victorian man of letters, who was raging one day about the section in the newspapers that used to write about what was happening at court. Okay? And he said, how can we help but becoming snobs so long as this balderdash is set before us? Down with the newspapers, those engines and propagators of snobbishness. With apologies to Thackeray and Alain de Botton, they seem to have suggested to me a cure for grammar anxiety. How can we help being snobs about grammar when this nonsense is set down before you? Down with the course books, most of them, obviously not mine. Down with the course books, those engines and propagators of grammar. How greatly the levels of grammar anxiety might diminish if only English language teaching material were to exchange a fraction of their interest in the present perfect or modal verbs for a focus on the significant patterns and lexis of ordinary conversation. Okay? So I would like to suggest that really all of us, if we want our students to speak better, we should be looking at typical, significant patterns and lexis of everyday conversation. Where am I? Yeah. So if you have a look at the handout that I think is available to you there, okay, what you can see there is 2 different conversations. The first conversation that I think you can see, and I just have to find my own copy here. Okay, where am I? Shows how ill-prepared I am. My apologies. Give me a second just to flick through my endless bits of paper myself. Yeah, the first conversation, I think I'm just going to see if I can open mine up here. Let's see. Download file. Save to my computer. Give us a second. My apologies. Yeah, so let me just open up this download myself. Or not. It doesn't like me. Ah, it does like me. Okay, so this basically started because I was watching a class many years ago in London, and in the lesson they were doing something from a well-known global course book. Okay, sorry, give me a minute. Let me just close some of these folders off so that we can see what we're doing. Verifying Microsoft Word. There's a copy above you. It should say teaching spoken something or other. Okay, so mine's just verifying. Yeah, the download link's quite slow on my computer anyway. And basically the conversation was a kind of slightly ridiculous conversation that I think causes problems for students. I don't have it written here in front of me, but it was something like, you know, I want to buy a motorbike. Which one should I buy? You should buy a cheap one. Thank you. Oh, is mine open now or not? Dun, 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 dun. Ah, sorry about this. This is what happens when you... Yeah, so I want to buy a motorbike. What do you think I should do? You should look at the advertisements in the local papers. Which papers should I get? I think you should buy local papers. What do you think I should do before I buy a bike? I don't think you should decide quickly. You should check the condition. You should ask someone who knows about bikes. You shouldn't just buy one because it looks nice. You should be careful. Now, I know as a writer that these kinds of conversations are designed to include as many possible versions of should as they can. So you've got question forms of should, negative forms of should, positive forms of should, I should, you should, etc. The problem is, nobody talks like this. It's a slightly mad conversation. We never have conversations where every single sentence has should in them. We wonder why students struggle to transfer grammar from these kind of present, practice, produce classes. Well, one reason is because they're not seeing how grammar actually really works. So I decided to just, you know, as an experiment, try to think about what a conversation might look like if it was between two friends and they were really talking about buying a bike. So, what you can see on the next part of the handout, and I'll read it out for you in case you don't have it, it's just a kind of scripted conversation between two friends trying to be slightly more realistic and not force endless examples of grammar. So how are you thinking of getting to your, how are you going to get to your new job? I was thinking of buying a motorbike. What, new or second hand? Well, I'm not really sure. Second hand, I guess. I haven't got that much money, really. I don't know. Do you know much about bikes? What do you reckon? Yeah, I used to have a bike, but I sold it. How much are you prepared to spend? Not too much. I don't know. 500 or 600 quid? I've no idea how much they cost. Well, it'll have to be second hand then. You won't get anything for that kind of price new. You should be able to get something decent second hand for that kind of money, but you need to be careful. There's no point buying something cheap, which is then just going to break down every 5 minutes. No, I suppose not. Where's the best place to look? You're probably best looking in Loot, but some of the local papers might have some ads. There's a shop down the road which I think sells second-hand bikes, but they'll probably be that much more expensive. Oh, sorry. Just that. Where are we? Right. Then again, I suppose you'd have a bit more security if anything did go wrong. I mean, you could take it back. Yeah, that's true. Listen, maybe you ought to ask someone who knows a bit more about it than me. I could ring my mate Ben if you like. He bought a bike a couple of months ago. He might be more use. Well, if you think he won't mind. No, I'm sure he won't. I'll give him a call now. Are you sure? Yeah, of course, no problem. I was going to call him anyway. Right, cheers. That'd be great. I'll just get his number. Now, that conversation there, as I said, is scripted, but I think it's a much more realistic model of what normal conversation looks like. It's much closer to a kind of conversation that your students might recognize themselves having in their own Ukrainian reality. And when you look at the language that's in there, when you think about the significant patterns and lexis of ordinary conversation, well, the good news is, if you are a devotee of King grammar, there's still plenty of examples of King grammar in there. So you've got things like, how are you going to get to your new job? Okay. You've got will and won't. I'll give him a call now. I'll just get his number. I'm sure he won't mind. You won't get anything for that price new. You've got might. He might be more use. You've got could. I could ring my mate Ben if you like. You've got should, although interestingly, not for giving advice. This wasn't deliberate, okay? It was you should be able to get something decent for that kind of money, where it means I think you will, okay? Not a use we teach enough, I think, because we're too busy saying, what should I do? You shouldn't do this, you should do that. And you've got would. That'd be great, okay? So if you're looking more at natural everyday conversation, you get more exposure to and more recycling of all of the main grammar points that you want to be looking at anyway. On top of that, you get common patterns. So you get things like, I was vaguely thinking of. For someone like Luciano, who suffers from grammar anxiety, when you ask him, what are you doing tonight? I don't know. I was vaguely thinking of going out somewhere. This is the past continuous to talk about the future. You get things like what? New or second hand? What? Automatic or manual? Still or sparkling? You know, those kind of things. You get there's no point which often appears in the Cambridge exams. There's no point buying something cheap which is just going to break down. You get best. We do these lessons about what's the longest river in the world, what's the fastest animal, who's the tallest person in your class. What we don't do enough, right from elementary level, beginner level, is look more at best. Where's the best place to look? Who's the best person to talk to? What's the best site to try? Who's the best person to email? Where's the best place to eat? What's the best thing to buy? And we also don't look at other ways of recommending or giving advice. You're probably best looking in loot. You're probably best asking someone who knows more about it than I do. So again, all of these are things that you could focus on at different times in different lessons if you have a bit more natural conversation in the course book. Okay? You also get different kinds of pragmatic patterns. So you get things like double questions. Do you know much about bikes? What do you reckon? How was your weekend? Was it good? How are you coping with lockdown? Are you managing okay? You get uncertainty and asking for an opinion. I don't know. What do you reckon? I'm not sure. What would you do? You get stating your choice and giving a reason. Second hand, I haven't got that much money. Just orange juice, please. I don't drink alcohol. You get suggesting and reasons. You need to be careful. There's no point buying something cheap, which is just going to break down. You also get these little patterns like problem, offer, check or accept, reassure, check, reassure, okay, which can be useful when getting students to practice having similar kinds of conversations. And you get some interesting words. So you get things like, how much are you prepared to pay? I'm not prepared to work weekends. Are you prepared to travel? Are you prepared to work in the evenings? I don't know. What do you reckon? Okay. If you're studying in England, a word like quid, meaning pound or pounds, is very useful. How much was it? 500 quid. Can you lend me 10 quid? It cost me over 800 quid. And a word like decent, you should be able to get something decent for that kind of money. Do you know where I can get a decent pint of Guinness around here? You can't get a decent coffee anywhere around here. So all of these different words and different patterns are useful for students learning to speak normal, everyday spoken language. Okay? So, where was I? Nearing the end, I think. Let me just have a quick look through my notes. So, if you agree with this, okay, if you think, yes, those kinds of conversations maybe offer a bit more, those kind of conversations maybe represent a little bit more of a realistic example of how language actually works. Those conversations are a bit more meaningful and relatable for students than I have a headache, what should I do? You should take aspirin. How many aspirins should I take? You should not take 10. You should not cut your head off. You should take 2. How often should I take them? You should take them every 2 hours. You know, if we're kind of trying to focus on slightly more meaningful communication at all levels. And if we're trying to help our students see the relationship between words and grammar, we need to be moving away from these lessons where we're just looking at one structure in peculiar isolation and then maybe learning a few random single words, because that's not going to take our students where we want to get them. What we need to do is assassinate King Grammar. Now, assassinating can be a scary business. You know, sometimes after a revolution, new boss, same as the old boss. So here are some things that we can all do, I think, to lead to some kind of peaceful revolution or peaceful change. One thing is just stop thinking of grammar and vocabulary as separate. When you're teaching vocabulary, teach it with grammar it's often used with and with other words it's often used with. When you're teaching grammar, teach it with other grammar structures that it may frequently co-occur with and with vocabulary that it's often used with. Never think single words, okay? It's much better to always be thinking about collocations, phrases, which words go with other words, which words go with which grammar. Give examples of the new language that you're teaching. Use your students to elicit more. Just before I did this webinar, I was teaching online and my advanced level students were talking about people they knew from high school. And one of the phrases that came up was someone talking about a very religious person they went to school with who became a priest, but then kind of went crazy, moved to Thailand, got lots of money from his followers and spent it all partying. And I said, so he went off the rails. And we then had a couple of examples. You know, he got famous when he was about 18 and he couldn't handle it. He went badly off the rails and ended up in rehab. We asked, any things that normally happen when people go off the rails? How can it end when someone goes off the rails? And kind of using the students to get some extra language and some extra examples. Using the board, or in this day and age, the chat box to record some of this new language, some of these chunks, some of these sentences. Show the students and use in class more dialogues, more typical exchanges. As a coursebook writer with the Outcomes series, very much what we've tried to do is to have conversations that we feel are typical, are understandable for students at different levels, that are graded at different levels, okay, but that are meaningful and relevant and recycle bits of language that students have already seen themselves. When you're teaching language, think about, when would I say this? Why would someone say this? Who would you say it to? If you're teaching a piece of grammar and you can't think when someone would say this, why to who, don't teach it. If it's something like, you know, I don't know, what John lost was his keys. Obviously, it's a possible sentence of English, but is it probable? Is it a sentence you've ever said? Can you think when someone would realistically say this or why they would say this? If not, teach a more useful example of, you know, a cleft sentence beginning with what. Teach something like, no, it's not that bothers me. What really worries me is the fact that we haven't even started mass testing here yet, for example. Okay? Oh, sorry, wrong click. Where are we? Yeah, do more gap-filled texts, gap-filled dialogues, just working with language above sentence level a little bit more. Language in dialogues, language in little kind of conversations and little kinds of texts. It might mean, sometimes, for some of your classes, writing material to reflect on things. It might mean using the kind of material that we've tried to produce through the Outcome series to help you deal with these kinds of things. So, finally, where are we? Let me just try and click that last button. If grammar is dead, or King Grammar is dead, long live what? Okay? Can be scary when kings or queens die, can't it? So, maybe one way of thinking about it is, it's not all doom and gloom. Grammar is dead, but long live lexico-grammatical structures. Okay? Or maybe grammar is dead. Long live grammaticalized lexis, where you're learning the vocabulary, you're learning the lexis, but with the grammar that it often goes with, so that King Grammar's still there somewhere, just not ruling the roost in the same way. For those of you that weren't huge fans of King Grammar in the first place, grammar is dead. Long live curiosity and wonder in the ordinary. Because for me, one of the things that's kept me very interested in language teaching is just being more curious about how everyday language works. Okay? If you're interested, by the way, on Facebook, I have a Facebook group called English Questions Answered. Okay? And it's a site where people can bring their questions about everyday language, and we share our wonder at the ordinary. Okay? So feel free to join it on Facebook. Finally, if you are persuaded grammar is dead, long live learning and teaching. Okay? Because I think in its purest sense, what I'm talking about is just teaching and learning language as language really is. Okay? Not creating false visions of how language works, but dealing with the complexity of language, the reality of language, and helping our students to experience language as language exists. So I'm going to stop there. I'll just finish by saying that if any of you want to get in touch with us, it's hugh@lexicallab.com. Our website is www.lexicallab.com. We blog about language and about teaching there. We also have a Facebook page, Lexical Lab Limited, as well as the English Questions Answered. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube as well. I know that there's going to be another presentation after this, but I wanted to try to see if anyone has any particular questions. Okay, anything you really wanted to ask. I can see lots of thanks. Thank you for your thanks. We're going to have 1,300 thanks. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to see the questions. It's rushing past. Let me have a quick look. I saw a question there. I wish there were lexical course books for young learners. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that. I would say Outcomes is really kind of 15, 16 years up. So my favourite course book, well, I'm biased, Olya. I would say Outcomes personally, because I co-wrote it. But I'm probably the wrong person to ask in that sense. Okay, let me have a quick look down and see if there's anything else I've missed. Okay. What else? I'm glad it was useful and interesting. Do you sometimes use drilling? Yes, all the time. And often drilling fast and drilling slow. So even when I'm teaching very low levels, okay, I'll do things like, you know, what are you going to do? 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 So that students get the chance to hear how the grammar sounds, said fast, said slow. Okay? Grammaticalized lexis is basically vocabulary with the grammar it's often used with added on. So rather than learn a word like point, you learn something like don't point, it's rude. Or you learn there's no point talking to you if you're not going to listen. Or you learn you may have a point. Okay, where the different meanings of point often have their own kind of grammar that goes with them. So if I hear don't point, I understand you mean this. If I hear you may have a point, I understand that you mean there might be something to your argument. Okay, and that, you know, part of the way you understand that is because you learn the word with the grammar it's often used with. And that applies for all kinds of things. If you learn a word like arrest, you know, you need to learn something like he was arrested and charged with murder, rape, manslaughter, etc. So that's what I mean by grammaticalized lexis, okay? It's teaching the vocabulary with the grammar that it's often used with. Okay, specific books by adults. Yeah, I would say Outcomes, available in Ukraine through Linguist, of course. Yeah, hopefully you'll be sent some more information about all of that. What's my attitude to CLIL? I have mixed feelings about CLIL. I think there's a lot of research to suggest that it results in poorer language acquisition and poorer content acquisition than studying about those subjects in first language and learning English explicitly in language classes would result in. I think it can often be problematic like that. It depends what you mean by CLIL. If you mean content-rich language that also results in lots of language work, obviously that's what course books kind of do a lot of the time anyway. I think it depends what other kind of language teaching you're also getting. And it depends on what the material's like, what the CLIL is, if you're also learning about those subjects in your first language, how much background knowledge you have, etc. But I think it's healthy to retain a degree of skepticism about it personally. Okay? Do you often use examples of the subjunctive? Very rarely. Okay, I mean, I would say that's worth spending 10 or 15 minutes on in a CPE class at proficiency level and then never talking about again, personally. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else. What are your tips for explaining conditional sentences? Do it simply. You know, so basically, just keep it simple. Zero conditional, it's generally or always true. First conditional, it's possible or probable now or at some point in the future. Second conditional, it's imaginary. Yeah, just keep it really simple, I would say, personally. And then after that, a little bit of practice, and then it's just repeated exposure and repeated experience of that language over time in everyday kind of contexts. Which intermediate book? That would be Outcomes Intermediate, I think, personally. You know, other people may have different answers. As I said, I may be a little bit biased. Do you sometimes visit Ukraine? I do, Alessia. I usually come to Ukraine at least once a year. Last year I was lucky enough to visit Lviv and Kharkiv and Odessa and Kiev. And I love coming to Ukraine and I love working with Ukrainian teachers. May success attend you. Thank you. Some students reproduce structures from films which are often grammatically wrong. If they've heard them in a film and they're working for them, I guess I would ask what you mean by grammatically wrong. I mean, if they say things like, you know, what you gonna do from a gangster movie or something, I would say that's fine. If they've heard native speakers using them and they're using them in the same context in which those natives were using them in the films, you know, there's different kinds of grammar, and maybe it's just relatively non-standard grammar as opposed to incorrect grammar. And you might need to have a discussion about that's not standard grammar, that's more informal or spoken grammar or more colloquial. In the exam, do this. Are there materials for distance learning with outcomes? Yeah, I think there's an ebook now available. Obviously, if you talk to Lucy or Alex or the Linguist people, they'll know more about that than I will. Certificate, I think that'll be mentioned later. Where else are we? Let me have a quick look through. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the webinar. Yeah, do get in touch and they can sort out the ebook through Linguist. Thank you very much, Julia. Okay, if anyone else does have any questions, okay, please feel free to email me. As you saw, it's hugh@lexicallab.com. If you have language questions, please find the English Questions Answered group on Facebook or just email me directly. It's always a real pleasure for us to hear from people who are using outcomes or interested in outcomes or any of the other National Geographic Learning content. And I will always answer the emails and the messages, and I like to be in touch with people. So, you know, thank you very much, and I'll stop talking and hand back over to Lucy, I guess. But thank you so much to so many of you for giving up your time to be here. I guess this is the benefit of talking during lockdown. We have a captive audience. Okay, thank you all very much, and enjoy the next session, and keep in touch and take care.
Thank you very much, Hugh, and thank you all of you to all your questions. Sorry, I've slightly changed location, but I just wanted to give him a little bit of an introduction. Alex is the in-house teacher trainer at National Geographic Learning. He is Delta trained and has over 16 years experience working in ELT as a teacher, academic director, and as a teacher trainer. Normally he is traveling the world from us, but more recently, as I'm sure you can imagine, he is delivering webinars to teachers all over the world instead of traveling. So Alex, I will pass over to you. I know you're just getting your presentation up.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Lucy. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you can all see me, that you can all hear me okay. Please use the little man to raise your hand to make sure that you can indeed see me and hear me okay. Amazing. There we go. 1,000 hands are going straight up. Good job. Okay, let me just clear that. Yeah, strange things happen when 1,000 people raise their hands at once, so it might have a little bit of an impact on the speed of the webinar, of the platform, I should say. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to Hugh for doing a wonderful session just now. I can never get bored of listening to Hugh talk. I think his ideas are great, and I think, well, from judging from your comments, a lot of you agreed with what he was saying and will put that into action. My talk, on the other hand, is going a very different direction, where we will be talking all about TED Talks and how to use them in the ELT classroom, kind of within a demo lesson. That said, it will be a very interactive session as well. So I hope that you are all ready for that. But before we do anything else, I have a very quick question for you, which we'll do as a poll. So you should see this. Please do not type in the chat box your answers. Just click on the correct button. I've used TED Talks in my lesson before. Yes or no? Very simple question. And again, please do not type in the chat box. Let's keep that for questions and comments. I'm going to give you 15 seconds to vote, okay? Hello, hello, hi, lots of things. Okay, again, please do not type in the chat box. Type in or click on the buttons in the poll, please. I can't count the comments. It moves too quickly. Okay, I think that is time up. I'm going to start broadcasting the results. So you can see there that 62, more or less 63% of you have not used TED Talks before, and 37-ish% have. So this is good news for me. It means that you, and for you, because it means that you will be learning a lot in this session. Even for those who have used TED Talks before, I hope I will be able to give you some more ideas as well. So like I say, there's lots of practical ideas coming your way, but also an opportunity for you to share your ideas with the wider group of Ukrainian teachers. So in terms of how we're going to proceed, this is our agenda for this session. So first of all, we're going to look at how we actually choose an appropriate TED Talk for our class. And then secondly, we're going to look at how to use it effectively in our class, doing a demo lesson as part of that. Now we've got a lot to get through. I apologize already if I go over the 1 hour mark, but I promise you that it won't seem like 1 hour. It will go very, very quickly. So, question number 1, how do we choose a TED Talk for our students? This is a rhetorical question. Of course, it makes sense for you to choose a topic or choose a TED Talk that complements what you are already doing in the course book. This is because their knowledge, their existing knowledge is already activated. They have that schemata already. Because a big thing about teaching with TED Talks is that you need to make sure that students are prepared for what they're going to be listening to and watching. And that can take an awful lot of time. However, if you're doing the TED Talk as a sort of added extra to your existing course material, that schemata is already activated. Your students already have the information, a lot of ideas connected to that topic. So, first advice, always pick something that is relevant to what you're studying in your lessons, or alternatively, something which you know your students are interested in. Of course, there are other factors to think about as well. Their age, what their general interests are. So you need to be a little bit careful. But for the sake of going forward, we're going to base it on teaching with the course book as an added to the course book. For example, imagine we have been teaching this unit all about the environment to our group of pre-intermediate level students. And we thought it'd be really nice to do a TED Talk to supplement this particular unit. So, what do I do? Well, my first stop is, of course, TED.com. Okay, so this is the site where you can find every single TED Talk that has been broadcast. Okay, it is the official site, and because it's the official site, there's extra stuff on there which can help you make your decision, and we'll see that in a moment. So, what do we do next? We click on the watch button, because we want to try and filter down what we want to choose from rather than have like an open, just go through all the TED Talks. That would take too long. We click on watch, and then we click on the top button there, TED Talks, browse the library. And that's what we get. We get 3,300 plus talks to stir your curiosity. And that's exactly what we want to be doing. That's why we're teaching with TED Talks. I've done sessions before. I think I did a session last year in Ukraine, actually, on why we should use TED Talks. So I'm not going to go into that now, but certainly one thing is that it does stir your curiosity. But what we're interested in now is trying to find the right talk for our intermediate or pre-intermediate class on the environment. Now, I don't want to pick a TED Talk that's overly long. So the first thing I want to do is click on duration. I click on duration, and I get to choose how long the TED Talk is that I want. 0 to 6 minutes, 6 to 12 minutes. Now, of course, depending on the level of my students, but also how long my lessons are, I want to pick an appropriate length talk. Generally speaking, for me, I look at the 0 to 6 minutes. Maybe at B2 plus, I'll look at 6 to 12 minutes. But generally, 0 to 6 minutes is okay. Because the length of it doesn't necessarily mean that the language is easier. It just means there's less cognitive load on the learners to focus for such a long time. What, of course, I want to then do is choose the appropriate topic. So I click on topics. You've got some key topics there. but really we want to see all topics. So we click on that, and we get an alphabeticized list of topics which we can choose from. And we can see here, this is E and F. There's over 50 different talks here, just on E to F, in terms of topics. Now, we're doing a unit on environment, so I'm going to click on environment. And then I will get a list of talks. Now, of course, I've narrowed it down. I've got the topic I want. I've got the length of talk I want. I now need to make a choice as a teacher. I need to look at some which I think might be interesting. So there is going to be some pre-work for you as a teacher. You will need to look at the titles, watch the first couple of minutes of a talk to see whether or not you think it is appropriate. But you also need to think about the language level as well. So in this case, I have chosen this talk by Melati and Isabel Widson, our campaign to ban plastic bags on Bali. Now, I've chosen this one because I like the look of it. I think it's going to be relevant to my learners. I think that the speakers are of a similar age, therefore they can make that connection. However, what I don't know at this point is whether or not the language level is going to be appropriate for my students. So, I need to check how I can do that. And there's a very simple way. On the TED website, they all have the transcripts available right here. So you can pull up the transcript and you can have a read through beforehand. But there are also websites which you can copy and paste the transcripts into to get a very clear idea of the CEFR level. So we've got things like the text inspector, LexTutor, or readable.com. Now, the one I generally use is the Cambridge Text Inspector because it details in very great detail the level, or it analyzes every word within the transcript. So I copy and paste it in. Here it is. I pasted it into the website. Now, there are two versions. There's a free version and there's a paid version. The free version only allows up to 500 words. Okay? 500 words. So if it's a longer text, you need to do multiple times, for example. So I feed the text into the text inspector. I press enter, and I get a breakdown of all of the words in the text. In this case, the transcript. So we can see there that there are a lot of A1, 71, 73 A1 words, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, but also unlisted. These are generally names, places, things like this, because they're not dictionary words. And if I want to do it at a glance, I can see here really nicely that more or less the vocabulary is B1 and below. Svetlana, it is wow, right? Oh, it is extremely useful. It's not just great for TED Talks. Any authentic content that you find, you can feed through this. Okay, and if you want an even more detailed breakdown, you scroll down and you actually get the text color-coded. So every orange word is an A1 level word. Every green, well, was it more of a cyan, bluish, greenish color is A2, red is B1. It is a great tool, Irina. Absolutely. So I can see here that from the level of the language used, that this is going to be an appropriate TED Talk for my pre-intermediate, intermediate level learners. What it also helps me with, though, is it helps me to identify words which I need to pre-teach. So maybe anything in the B2 or C1 or C2 level, I should think about pre-teaching to my learners, but only if I think that they are relevant to the overall understanding of the students. Or for the TED Talk, rather. Okay, so we've decided this TED Talk is going to work for my students. Happy days. So, what we then think about is the previewing. How am I going to make this as accessible for my students as possible? Because that's one of the things I hear a lot of. Oh, I can't use TED Talks. They're too difficult for my students. Well, in the first instance, you need to choose the right TED Talk, as we've just seen. Secondly, you need to make sure that you are doing the appropriate activities, specifically the pre-viewing activities. So, this bit's over to you. In the chat box, what will you do to activate student schemata and introduce the theme of this TED Talk to your students? So remember, this is the talk, our campaign to ban plastic bags in Bali. How would you activate your student schemata? Type some ideas in the chat box. Okay, Victoria, I'm happy to help. Okay, good. I'll let us ask some related questions. Can you be more specific? Same for Elena. Ask for personal opinion, but be more specific. What questions could we specifically ask? We could use pictures, Ludmilla, yes. And Elena. Brainstorming, good, Olga. Start with some vocabulary. Bring a plastic bag to the classroom. Very nice, Alina. Realia. Bring a plastic bag in. Put one on everyone's desk. Talk about the plastic bag. Really nice. Lots of you saying about pictures, plastic bags at home, so making that personal connection, good. Would you like to help them? Good. I like that one from Irina, I think that was. Okay. Great ideas. I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to share with you some ideas that I had, some of which you've mentioned, so it's not rocket science. Right, let's have a look. Okay, first one, I think it's important to use the title for prediction type tasks. So, for example, number one, why do you think they want to ban plastic bags in Bali? Type your answers in the chat box. Why do you think they want to ban plastic bags? This is kind of a demo lesson, so we're going to do this with you. Excellent, Victoria. They're harmful. They hurt the environment. They want to protect the environment. They want to preserve the oceans. Good. Because to avoid pollution. Okay, great. Easy question. Bit of a trickier question though. Next one. What kind of things do you think they did to achieve this? How do you think they set about trying to ban plastic bags? Good, Yaroslava. Fines. Introduce fines again from Valentina. Volunteering, very nice. Lots of saying volunteering. Offer paper bags. Good, Julia. Promote recycling. Excellent. All good ideas. Don't produce plastic bags. Lots of recycling ideas. Okay, great. And then the last question you could ask them was, do you think they were successful? And your student's answer would either be, of course, yes or no. Sure. Perfect. That's just one way. Using the title is a great way to activate the schemata. Ask specific questions about it. Okay, I'm just going to do this very quickly. You know that. Okay. Idea number 2. So on the TED website, TED.com, all of the talks come with a short synopsis of the talk, a summary. So Of course, we can use this summary to introduce the idea in more detail. We could use it for some kind of comprehension questions. Maybe we could do a gap fill activity. Maybe we could take out some of the key vocabulary. They have to re-put it in. But the point is, even before they have watched the TED Talk, they've read the summary, they have a really good idea about what they're going to watch. And what this does, it relaxes them. Because you know what's kind of coming, you don't have to be so stressed, so focused about it. It's all about the preparation. You know, other things that we could do with the summary, we could do some jumbled sentences, we could do some more predictions or some general comprehension questions, true, false, multiple choice, and so on. Just like you would do with a reading text. Okay, idea number 3, similar to that one, is you can actually use the video script. Like we saw earlier, we can copy and paste from the TED website. And we can create our own activities using the video script. Now, the advantage of this is, again, it's giving students content directly from the talk. Therefore, when they hear it in the talk, they go, oh, okay, we read this, I understand it. So let's do an example of that. So here's a part of the text. Isabel, we started researching, and let's just say, the more we learned, there was nothing good about plastic bags. And you know what? We don't even need them. So a simple question you could ask, why are plastic bags so bad? Don't answer that question, we know why. Another example, we got stuck. So we learned lesson number 2, think outside the box. So again, what problems do you think they faced? Why did they get stuck? What does thinking outside the box mean? This one I would like you to answer in the chat box. What problems do you think they faced in their campaign against plastic bags? Multiple attendees are typing. What issues? Yeah, really good, Maria. Reluctance of the authorities. Government restrictions, good, Victoria. Yep. Good ideas. How to replace the plastic bags. Yeah. Hang on, someone's written in pink there. That's nice. Let's find that one. Well, you guys are typing so quickly. Yeah, it's difficult to change people's habits. They need something to replace the plastic. Okay, great. All good ideas. One more example. We went to India to give a talk, and our parents took us to visit the private house of Mahatma Gandhi. We learned about the power of hunger strikes he did to reach his goals. Why do you think hunger strikes might be so powerful? Do you think it's a good idea for teenage girls to do? So not only does it provide content for the learners, it also gets them thinking on a deeper level. In other words, we are activating those critical thinking skills, but also their communication skills when they're sharing ideas with each other. So that's just one way in which we could use the tape script or the video script. You could, of course, do jumbled sentences, jumbled paragraphs, gap fill tasks, whatever you like. But the purpose of it should not be forgotten. It's to support students with their viewing of the talk that comes later. Okay, idea number 4. Less focused on the talk itself, but more general about the theme. So, a discussion type question. Discuss the following questions. What do you already do to play your part in protecting the planet? What could you do more of? How might you achieve that? Are there any particular issues that affect where you live? Is anything being done to help that? Now, you'll notice I've highlighted the you here because it's all about making that connection to the learners. Wherever possible, you need to make sure that students can connect to the material that they're reading, that they're viewing. In other words, we are making it relevant to their lives. Okay. Something similar to that on a more general basis is, you all mentioned this earlier, use photographs. So, I'll ask this question to you. How do these photos make you feel? Write one adjective. Concerned, says Irina. Anxious, shocked, terrible, says Olga. Disgusted, says Yaroslava. Terrified, says Natalia. Awful, sad, says Tamara. Helpless, says Irina. Sad, says many of you. Hannah says sad as well. Desperate, says Alina. Exactly. All very negative impacts, right? Upset, exactly. Embarrassed, sad, shocked, terrible, exactly. So photos have a big impact. So you follow that up with, well, what can we do to stop this happening? So again, it provides a springboard for discussion. And from my experience, when students have photo content to kind of as a springboard, they're more likely to be able to say something. If you just said to your students, how can we stop plastic pollution? They're not going to really react. But when you give them that photographic evidence, photographic input, they're more likely to express themselves. Yes, Olga, it does make me feel depressed as well. Guilty, good one, Oksana. Okay, last idea. We might also want to expand on the theme, make it more general. This is quite an easy topic to do, pollution. I found this really nice National Geographic website, 10 shocking facts about plastic. And you get students to read it, it's very short, and they discuss what facts they find the most shocking, how does it impact on you, how does it make you feel. So it's just preparing students for what they're going to view. So that's how we're activating just the general knowledge. Of course, we need to pre-teach vocabulary as well. I think absolutely vital. Now, we saw earlier how when we feed a text into the text inspector, we get the words all leveled out. So it tells you, in other words, what words you need to be pre-teaching. Now, of course, you're not going to pre-teach every single word that is a B2 level and above. It'd be too many. You pick the ones which are most necessary for the general understanding. And for this one, I've chosen to do it as inferring from context type task. The reason I've done this is because, again, we're providing content directly from the video script. So again, students know what they are listening for. Now, it might be that you wanted to do a matching task, matching the word with the definition. That's fine. But I think by having it in context, it further supports the learners when they come to listen. Because they'll hear these sentences in the text, within the main talk, and it gives them comfort. It reassures them that they understand what they are listening to. Okay, Anastasia asked a great question. How much time does it take to do it with a TED video? How long is a piece of string? I've given you 7 activities here for previewing. You would not do all of them. Absolutely not. You might do 2, maybe 3 of them. Up to you. But also how much time you have. Okay? And yes, it is time consuming. But I think if you're going to be preparing a lesson on authentic materials, you need to be really thorough in how you're going to be teaching it. And it might be that you do your TED Talk over 2 lessons. If you've got 40-minute lessons, you might spend the first lesson doing a lot of the pre-teaching stuff, and then doing a viewing in the next lesson with the comprehension. But it all depends on your lesson length, your students, etc. I mean, some of this stuff you could set them as homework beforehand, so kind of a flipped classroom, where They do the pre-work and then they come in and they're ready to watch the video. So, you know, like I said, how long's a piece of string? You know, this particular lesson I'm showing you, I've done it different ways. I've done it across a 3-hour lesson. I've done it across an 1.5-hour lesson. I just cut different things out. I have different focus of what I want to do. Julia, thank you for the shout out for Keynote and Perspectives. They are great. Good answer. Okay. So a quick summary of pre-tasks. Activate the schemata by predicting content from the title, using the synopsis for summary to introduce the idea. Do some comprehension questions with it. Utilize the video scripts in creative ways. Connect the idea to their lives and link it to other resources if possible. And of course, pre-teach vocabulary. So that's all the pre-teaching stuff. What we now need to think about is what we can do while watching it, okay? Now, we're going to watch the video, and I have this question for you while you're watching the talk. What is Melati and Isabel's message worth spreading? That is all I want you to answer. What is their message worth spreading? This talk is 5.5 minutes long, but it's 5.5 minutes very well spent. Okay? So please, I hope it works fine. It should work fine. We played it earlier and it worked. Bear with me. Okay. Oops. When it starts playing, I'm going to mute my microphone so there's no echo, but please just let me know in the chat box that you can see it and hear it okay. I have edited it so that it should work on iPads and iPhones. If it doesn't, then I apologize, but you can watch it at that website there as well. You can watch it on that website too. Okay, let's hope this works. Fingers crossed.
Bali, island of gods.
A green paradise.
Or a paradise lost. Bali, island of garbage.
In Bali, we generate 680 cubic meters of plastic garbage a day. That's about a 14-story building. And when it comes to plastic bags, less than 5% gets recycled.
We know that changes the image you may have of our island. It changed ours too when we learned about it. When we learned that almost all plastic bags in Bali ends up in our drains, and then in our rivers, and then in our ocean. And those that don't even make it to the ocean, they're either burned or littered.
So we decided to do something about it. And we have been working for almost 3 years now to try to say no to plastic bags on our home island. And we have had some significant successes. We started researching, and let's just say the more we learned, there was nothing good about plastic bags. And you know what? We don't even need them.
We were really inspired by the efforts to say no to plastic bags in many other places. From Hawaii to Rwanda, and to several cities like Oakland and Dublin.
And so the idea turned into the launch of Bye Bye Plastic Bags.
The volunteer team includes children from all over the island, from both international and local schools. And together with them, we started a multi-layered approach based on an on- and offline signature petition, educational and inspirational presentations at schools. We raised general awareness at markets, festivals, beach cleanups. And last but not least, we distribute alternative bags. Bags like net bags, recycled newspaper bags, or 100% organic material bags, all made by local initiatives on the island. It's not always easy. Sometimes it does get a little bit hard to walk your talk.
But last year, we did exactly that. We went to India to give a talk, and our parents took us to visit the former private house of Mahatma Gandhi. We learned about the power of hunger strikes he did to reach his goals. Yes, by the end of the tour, when we met our parents again, we both made a decision and said we're going on a hunger strike.
And you can probably imagine their faces. It took a lot of convincing, and not only to our parents, but to our friends and to our teachers as well. Isabel and I were serious about doing this. So we met with a nutritionist, and we came up with a compromise of not eating from sunrise to sunset every day until the governor of Bali would agree to meet with us to talk about how to stop plastic bags on Bali.
Our Mogla Makan, as it is called in Bahasa Indonesia, started. We used social media to support our goal, and already on day 2, police started to come at our home and school. What were these 2 girls doing? We knew we weren't making the governor look his best by doing this food strike. We could have gone to jail. But hey, it worked. 24 hours later, we were picked up from school and escorted to the office of the governor.
And there he was, waiting for us to meet and speak, being all supportive and thankful for our willingness to care for the beauty and the environment of Bali. He signed a promise to help the people of Bali say no to plastic bags, and we are now friends, and on a regular basis, we remind him and his team of the promises he has made. And indeed, recently he stated and committed that Bali will be plastic bag free by 2018.
Also, at the International Airport of Bali, one of our supporters are planning to start a plastic bag-free policy by 2016.
Stop handing out free plastic bags and bring in your own reusable bag is our next message to change that mindset of the public.
Our short-term campaign, One Island, One Voice, is all about this. We check and recognize the shops and restaurants that have declared themselves a plastic bag-free zone, and we put this sticker at their entrance and publish their names on social media and some important magazines on Bali, and conversely, that highlights those who do not have the sticker.
So, why are we actually telling you all of this? Well, partly it is because we are proud of the results that together with our team we have been able to reach, but also because along the way we have learned that kids can do things. We can make things happen. Isabel and I were only 10 and 12 years old when we started this. We never had a business plan, nor a fixed strategy, nor any hidden agendas. Just the idea in front of us and a group of friends working with us. All we wanted to do was stop those plastic bags from wrapping and suffocating our beautiful home. Kids have a boundless energy and a motivation to be the change the world needs.
So to all the kids of this beautiful but challenging world, go for it. Make that difference. We're not telling you it's going to be easy. We're telling you it's going to be worth it. Us kids may only be 25% of the world's population, but we are 100% of the future.
We still have a lot of work to do, but know that we will not stop until the first question asked when arriving at the Bali airports will be, "Welcome to Bali. Do you have any plastic bags to declare?" Om Shanti 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 Om.
Okay, judging from your comments, you all enjoyed that hugely, but hopefully you were listening to my question, which was, what was their overriding message? Of course, to ban plastic bags, but what was the deeper message? Yeah, if you have motivation, you can make a difference. Good. Who said that? Was Tatiana. Any other suggestions? Even one person matters. Yeah. Yeah, good, Natalia. Even children are 100% the future. Anything else? We need to act now, yeah. Let's make a difference. Yeah, but specifically who though? Yeah, good. I think Elena had said that. Kids can make a difference. Kids are the future. They can make a difference. Which is a really powerful message, right? They are the future. So there's kind of multiple messages there, but yeah. We are the kids of the future. They can make a difference. So, we're viewing it. We viewed it. We have a general gist listening question. What was the main idea? But of course, we don't want to use it just for that. We want to use it for more detailed listening, right? So, another question for you in the chat box. What kind of comprehension tasks could you do with your students while viewing the talk? What kind of things could they be doing, or what comprehension tasks could you use? Find synonymic phrases, Oksana, okay, high level, yeah. You don't fill in the gaps, yeah. Gap fills, true, false. Gap fill, multiple choice, fill in the gaps. Exactly. I mean, the while listening task is very much what you would do with any listening comprehension. Basically, matching tasks, asking questions. Exactly. Order the points, really nice one. I had that one here. Order the points. So this is just some ideas. As you watch the TED Talk, order these campaign methods in the order in which you hear them, for example. But I think what's important, especially with longer TED Talks, is that we try to break them up into more manageable chunks. Usually in a course book, you have a scripted text that's easy to follow, and more often than not is about 3 minutes long, depending on the level. When students have to listen to something for 6 minutes and have lots of questions, it can get really, really tough. So my general advice is to try and split it up into different parts. Now this talk was about 5.5 minutes long, so I'd split it into 2 halves and have 2 different types of question. So watching part 1, complete the notes. Now the great thing about note completion is that you can make it as complex or as easy as possible depending on your level. You just give different amounts of information. So because this is aimed at pre-intermediates, I've given a lot of information. There's only a few words they have to fill in. But if I was doing it at a higher level, I would maybe just give them bullet points and they had to complete those bullet points within a table. So it's quite easy to vary. And in this one, I've got a kind of a multiple choice type question. Choose the correct phrase from the talk. But you could use gap fill tasks. You could use true and false. You could use proper multiple choice type questions. There's a lot of variety. So actually, you know, the listening side of it, it isn't reinventing the wheel. You're doing what you would do with a normal listening task. So, a couple of key rules though. The first viewing should always be a gist task, checking predictions. You want students to enjoy the TED Talk. You don't want to say, right, watch the TED Talk and answer these 10 questions, because they're going to freak out. They're going to be reading the questions, trying to answer them, and not listening, not understanding. And that's kind of the point. We are making authentic content accessible to them. And overloading them with questions does the exact opposite. Secondly, split it into manageable chunks, depending on the length. And then third rule, grade the task for the level. Now, the great thing about doing the ordering task is you're actually giving the students content of the talk. So they're just listening to these set phrases, set ideas, to put them in order. So therefore, it is not overloading them with having to listen for specific information per se. For example, what if it's note-taking like we saw earlier? At high levels, you ask them to listen for more information. If it's multiple choice, you reduce the options for lower levels. Information gap fill tasks, you could also do. Ordering. Short answers. Multiple choice. True, false. all of these things you said, table completion, note taking. It's not reinventing the wheel. Now, that's all well and good. But I think we would be a little bit amiss as teachers if we were just to watch a TED Talk and do listening comprehension. Because there's so much more that can be done with a TED Talk. It's much like an iceberg. And we all know that there is more under the water than above the water with an iceberg. So if you imagine the iceberg, the TED Talk is an iceberg. The top of the iceberg is the listening. It's the above water. It's what we do all the time. It's the obvious thing to do. What isn't so obvious is what we can do follow-up tasks. In other words, what we can do in terms of maybe critical thinking, creative thinking, communication, collaboration. Those kind of 21st century skills which many TED speakers represent. So, another open question to you guys. Having watched the TED Talk and done the listening comprehension activities, what follow-up activities could you do with this particular TED Talk? Type your ideas in the chat box. Okay, good, Alona. A discussion task, of course. You write an essay, again more depth. Group work, pair work, designing a family eco project. I like that idea. Who was that? If I can find, yeah, Irina. Nice idea. Project work. Okay, saying project, so absolutely you can get them to design their own campaign, maybe. Create their own dialogue. Develop questions for the girls. Good, Irina. I'm glad you said that. We'll come back to that. Discussion questions for homework, writing an essay, good. Helen says pretend to be them, role play a conversation maybe, yeah. Pair work test, do your own presentations. Discuss what you can do for your environment, exactly. Write a paragraph, summaries, role play it, good ideas. You guys don't need my help. You will have it already. Okay, I'm going to share with you, I think it's 5 or 6 ideas that you could do with this talk, but some of them are more general as well. So, first of all, critical thinking. Rank order tasks are really effective, okay, because they get students thinking about things on a deeper level. So in this case, we're saying, rank them in order of number 1, the most effective, to number 7, the least effective. And of course, every student has a different opinion. Therefore, there is conflict. So once your students have put these into the order that they think is most effective to least effective, you get them to compare their lists. And because their lists are different, there's going to be debate. What you then ask them to do is to create a new list of just a top 3 or a top 4. Therefore, there is more communication. And throughout, there is critical thinking, because they're justifying, reasoning, analyzing, and there is, of course, collaboration, because they're working together. Now, just out of interest for my benefit, in the chat box, which one of these 7 campaign methods do you personally think is the most effective? But I'm only going to ask you for one, okay? Which one do you think is the most effective? Okay, distributing bags, online petitions. Number 3, awareness raising, hunger strikes. Well, some of you are giving multiple answers. Number 3 is coming up a lot. Awareness raising, educational programs, stickers in shops, action. Wow, okay. Without having done it as a poll, there's no definitive answer here. Well, number 3 does seem to be coming up a lot. Awareness raising. Beach cleaner? Okay. And this is the beauty of it, right? There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's purely your opinion. And if you can justify your opinion, you are thinking critically, you're reasoning in a more appropriate way. There's a great discussion task in that respect. Something else we do critical thinking in this one. You might even just question what they're saying. Just because somebody has told us something in a TED Talk doesn't mean that we have to believe them or we have to agree with them. We can question that. And I think it's important to get students to question things that they hear. Because, especially nowadays, there's a lot of fake news that we see online, in the papers, from friends, etc. So we might ask the question, do you think it really is possible for kids to do things like this, like the sisters? Why not? And that's the question you could ask about any TED Talk. Do you agree with it, with what they're saying? And you can do a poll, you can do a class vote, do a class debate on it. Now, thankfully, all of you are saying, yeah, I would agree with you. It is possible, but there need to be certain conditions that are maybe favourable to help them do that. Something else that I like to do with TED Talks, and again, you can do this with any TED Talk, is to use comment boxes. Now, anything you read or watch online nowadays has a comment box underneath it, whether it's YouTube, whether it's your local newspaper, international newspapers, TED.com. There are comments. People like reacting or commenting on things that they've seen or read. So this is taken directly from the TED website. Good job, girls. No one is too young to understand important things. Thanks for standing up and showing up us dumb adults, for example. So a really nice follow-up task I would do with students is to get them to write their own follow-up comment to what they saw on the TED Talk. And I'm going to ask you to do this very quickly. So in one sentence, one short sentence, comment or make a comment on this TED Talk. So just like, maybe you're agreeing with it, maybe you're disagreeing with it, say, wow, great talk, girls, I really agree with you. I wish people in my town were like you, whatever it might be. Oh yeah, we can make a difference. Girls, teachers, yeah, they also had a good teacher, right? Completely agree, it's up to date. Even being in Ukraine, I share my support to you. Baby steps taken by every single person. Good, Oksana. Okay, fine. Of course, in class, you're going to give your students longer time to maybe write a short paragraph rather than just one-word comments. Another way of doing this, actually, is to do it with a Padlet. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Padlet, but it's basically an online notice board. You can create one for your class and get students to add comments about anything they've watched or read. And make it a little bit more interactive. So the comment box is really good. Now, I think as Irina said earlier, we could ask them questions, right? Exactly. Interview the speaker, or interview the speakers in this case. So, imagine you're going to interview Malati and Isabel in pairs, right, for 5 questions that you would like to ask them. So, of course, here, it checks their understanding of the talk as a whole, their overall comprehension. It checks their question formation. Because they're in pairs, they're communicating, they're collaborating. So there's lots of skills this simple task is asking. So again, I'm going to do this with you. In the chat box, what one question would you like to ask the sisters? Multiple attendees are typing. Okay, oh nice. What will you do next? How busy are you? What was the most challenging thing? Good, Tatiana. Who inspired you? Good, Anna. Do your parents support you? Good, Olga. How do you feel? How do you feel now about being successful? Good, Tatiana. Irina again, Are your stickers eco-friendly? Ooh, good question. Really good question. How can I help you to continue making your great work? Perfect. So it's just a nice task to get students to do as a follow-up. And if you wanted to take that one step further, you could, of course, then get them to role-play the situation. So one of them can pretend to be the TED speaker, one of them is the interviewer. Now, of course, you don't know the real answers. It's a role-play. They can invent their own ideas. That's okay. And there should be enough information taken from the TED Talk to be able to, be on the right lines, so to speak. So interview the speakers, role play interviewing them. Idea number 4 is connected to presentation skills. I think this is important because I think we all know students, generally speaking, don't like giving presentations. Why don't they like giving presentations? One reason is because they don't know how to. They don't know what makes a good presentation. So I think it's important that when we're watching a TED Talk, we get them to think about what makes it a good TED Talk. What makes it a good presentation? So in this case, I've asked the question, what did Melati and Isabel do to engage the audience? What helped make their presentation so effective? So it's focusing on certain things, and hopefully the students pick up on this, right? Tatjana's asking a question, do you cooperate with Greta Thunberg? But again, ask you guys, what do Melati and Isabel do particularly well? How do they engage the learners? Questions still coming through, which is good. Yeah, okay, they acted very confident, didn't they? Dedication who inspired you again. But things like eye contact, use of humor, use of gesture, use of slides. So, I think for me, one of the really powerful images was them giving the certificate or giving the agreement to the president or the prime minister of Bali, right? Showing photos of consequences of you. Yeah, exactly. But also they showed pictures of them actually doing the things, right? We saw them at a beach cleanup. We saw them giving a presentation, an awareness-raising presentation. So they have evidence to back up what they're doing. And as they said in the talk, we're not just talking the talk, they are walking the walk. Yes, they're sincere. They are positive. All of it, perfect. Okay, and the last thing I want to say is using projects. All of you mentioned this before. TED Talks provide a great springboard for follow-up project work. No matter what the TED Talk is on, there is something you can do to get students thinking about the same thing, taking it a stage further, thinking about how it applies to their local situation. So in this one, work in small groups, think about what you and your friends could do to make the world a better place. You then get them to plan a campaign. So, as part of your presentation, explain what the issue is you're addressing, explain what the consequences of the issue are, state the different elements of your campaign, make a poster of your campaign. So it's very much student-centered learning. And for this kind of thing, as we know of projects, there is communication, there's collaboration, there's critical thinking, there's creativity. All of those things that we want our students to have, but we need to give them the opportunity to do that. And I think TED Talks gives the perfect springboard for that. Now, of course, there's other things you can do post-follow-up. You could get them to research more about the topic, read more about the topic. Guaranteed, if there's a TED Talk on a topic, there will be an article that they could read that will give further support to it or to back it up. I found this particular website, another National Geographic one, Planet or Plastic. a really nice website where you basically make a pledge about how you personally are going to help the environment. You can probably scan, I'll leave it here for you to scan the QR code very quickly. There's a website, www.nationalgeographic.com/environment/plastic pledge. And you go in there and you pledge to help the environment in one of a number of different ways. You can then share that with your friends. You can challenge your friends. And just you click on whichever one and it sends the link to your friends, to your colleagues. Now, of course, that's very specific to this particular talk, or any talk about saving the environment and plastic pollution. But like I said, any TED Talk will have articles related to it in some form or another. But again, it links it to the real world. And that's our job as teachers, right? To bring the real world into the classroom. It should reflect what is outside those four walls. Because it makes language learning especially relevant. It makes it meaningful. And for language learning to be meaningful, or to be worthwhile, it has to be meaningful. So, just a quick summary of post-viewing activities. We can get them to think critically about certain things in different ways. We can get them to do discussion activities, so communication skills. Interview the speaker, role play the conversation. Write a review or an opinion comment about the talk. Springboard for presentation skills work. Get them to retell or explain the TED Talk. Projects and presentations. So like I said, there's a lot that you can do post-viewing. Of course, I would not do all of these things with the same TED Talk. That would be a really, 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 really long lesson. You pick and choose. What is your main goal of the lesson? What is the outcome of the lesson? Bear that in mind when creating tasks. But certainly I would really, really reinforce the point that TED Talks are not just for listening comprehension. They are so much more than that. Okay, so we are nearly at the end of the session. We've talked there a lot about creating your own lessons from TED Talks. But of course, there are National Geographic Learning books, courses that have TED Talks within them with ready-made lesson plans for you. That saves you all that time and effort looking for an appropriate TED Talk. So we've got World English, Keynote, 21st Century Reading, 21st Century Communication, and also Perspectives. And you can find out more about all of those at eltngl.com/TED. Which leads me to any questions at all. I will try to answer them if you catch them in the chat box. For any further information, I should also direct you to the Linguist Facebook page or the Linguist homepage as well. Okay, so you can contact Diana there. You can contact Svetlana there as well in Ukraine. I also just want to share with you very quickly something that's relevant to the now. Of course, we are all in lockdown. I'm currently locked in my bedroom because I have children running around downstairs. So National Geographic Learning want to support teachers in this very difficult time with online teaching. So we do have a designated support site for online professional development resources. This is the website down here, or this is the QR code if you want to take a snap on your phone. But like I say, we do want to support teachers in this very difficult time as much as possible, because we know that you're stuck at home, your students are stuck at home, and we still have to teach them online. So those sites will help you with that tremendously. I should also say that I'm doing another webinar, an exclusive webinar for Ukraine next week, if you're not aware of it already. This is the link here, I've just posted it there. That is the sign up page, the registration page. where we'll be talking about developing and maximizing student talk time. I didn't see any questions come down there at all. I'm not sure if Lucy caught any. But hopefully I've given you insight in how you can use, well, A, how you can choose a TED Talk, and B, how you can facilitate their use in the classroom, developing more than just listening skills, their speaking skills, and those key 21st century skills as well. Okay, there was apparently a question about teaching grammar with TED. Let me try and find that. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use TED Talk as a grammar, as a springboard for grammar teaching. Of course, there is grammar within the talks, but I think there are other ways, there are better ways maybe to teach grammar. Specifically, if we're looking at very specific grammar points, whether it's past simple, conditionals, passives, whatever. Of course, it's possible, but I think it's kind of wasting what TED Talks can actually do. There's more to it than just listening and teaching grammar, teaching vocabulary. I'm going to repost that link for next week's webinar as well. Which is, I should say, it is next, check my diary, it is next Wednesday the 8th, so yeah, a week today. And Lucy's back for some final comments as well.
Thank you very much, Alex, and Hugh, although he's not here, but thank you to both of our presenters for giving up their time today. I know it was quite a long session, but I hope that you've all benefited from it, and I hope you have lots of ideas to take back to your online classrooms at the moment. Alex has just popped the Linguist contact details back up here. Thank you to Diana and to Svetlana for their presentations. Hopefully you've got all the relevant information you need to get in touch with them, and please do that. But yes, all my final closing comments are just that obviously people still ask about certificates. As I said, anyone that's attended more than 60% will get a certificate, and this will be sent out via email with a copy of the recording as well in the next couple of days. Linguist will send this out to you as they did with the invitations. We have, as well as the professional development site that Alex shared, we also have lots of webinars on our main webinar site, which Alex has put on screen now with a QR code, and also one for our In Focus blog. There are lots of articles and downloads and things on there that you can use, and all free resources, so please do go and check them out. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you again to all of you for joining and for participating so well. We had about 1,400 people at final count, which is excellent. And I hope you will stay well and stay safe. And hopefully Alex and Hugh will be able to come back out to Ukraine and visit in the not so distant future.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Thank you, everybody. Have a very lovely evening, and yeah, stay safe.